Amir Haleem.
Good afternoon. My name's Amir. I'm the founder of Helium and also the CEO of Nova Labs. I wanted to talk a little bit today about the state of the Helium network, where we started and where we're going. So I want to rewind a little bit back to 2013 when Helium was founded. A lot of people don't know, Helium is almost a 10-year-old company at this point. We started in 2013 with the vision of building a network for Internet of Things devices. So Internet of Things, at least in the context that we talk about it, are low-power devices like sensors and tracking devices that run on batteries and need to be really, really cheap. They need to be really cheap because they need to be everywhere. We looked at the state of wireless technology as it existed at the time, and we didn't see anything that could do that job. So if you tried to do this on cellular, it was going to be too expensive, the battery life wasn't going to work. If you tried to do this on Wi-Fi, the battery life wasn't going to work, and you had the authentication problem. How do you move between wireless networks? They all have different passwords. Bluetooth wouldn't work. It's also super low range, designed for very high bandwidth applications like streaming music. So what we needed was a wireless network that was designed for very, very, very small amounts of data, devices that could last for years and years and years on batteries. So we took a lot of different shots at how to build a network like that. It's not an easy task to build a global wireless network. 5 or 6 years ago, we decided that instead of trying to do this ourselves, instead of building the network ourselves and charging people to use it, we would take a completely different approach and put this in the hands of the people. So we devised a device called a hotspot, which is a wireless access point for IoT devices, and also a crypto miner. And that was our idea for how this would work. We launched in Austin in August of 2019, and things went pretty well after that, I would say. We are now at close to 1 million hotspots globally, so this has taken off and become the largest wireless network in the world of any kind. And it is completely people-powered. There's IoT coverage, so Internet of Things is IoT, that's the acronym. It's everywhere. So apparently 10% of the world's population is within range of an IoT hotspot now. And so this has been a phenomenal success so far on the coverage part. In terms of what uses the network. So last year, these kinds of IoT devices sent data on the network about 2.2 billion times. This year, already, we're at 7.5 billion times, right? So the amount of usage on the network is growing substantially. And it's important to remember that this isn't like a cellular network. This isn't a situation where there are billions and billions of cell phones and you're just trying to convince them to come join your network. Most of these devices don't exist today. Most of the companies building are literally building. They started with nothing and they have to build an application from scratch. Some examples of this, so this is a company called Mimic. It's a Turkish-based company. They have a tracking device that looks like a credit card. They have a safety device, which is like a personal alarm. They have a connected camera. These guys have been building for a few years. Their products are now in market. This one is, I'm biased to this one. This is by far my favorite application that I've seen today. It's from a company called NanoThings. As you can see, it's literally like a flexible temperature and location sensor that you can bend and literally peel the thing off the back and attach it to something. So for me, I'm so excited about this one because it's the kind of application that you could never have built without Helium. There is no other wireless technology that would have allowed this to exist. Airly is an interesting one as well. This is an environmental air quality monitoring sensor. On the face of it doesn't sound super exciting until you realize that the status quo today, how this is done today by other companies in the space, is they are literally driving cars around and measuring the air quality. And I have one that drives past my house every week. I won't name the company. It's super annoying to see an air quality monitoring company polluting the air with a car to monitor the air quality. I find it ridiculous. So now with something like Airly, you can, because it has 10 years of battery life, I can now take the sensor and attach it to a lamppost and just leave it there for 10 years and it does the same job. M3 is an agriculture company. So this space is called precision agriculture. This is the idea that if you were to instrument an entire farm, that is, put sensors everywhere across the farm, thousands of acres of farmland, you would be able to grow crops more efficiently, you would be able to do it more cleanly. And this again is an application that isn't a new idea. People have been talking about precision agriculture for at least the last decade. But to do this with a cellular network would be impossible because you need hundreds of sensors per acre, and these farms are thousands of acres, right? So there's no way of doing this, again, with existing technology. And last one, just to sort of give an example, the last of these examples for now, is a company called DroneDeck. So you may remember a few years ago, I think Jeff Bezos at Amazon at the time floated the idea of like, we should deliver packages using drones instead of people. Right? Like it would be much more efficient, you could do stuff like 10 minutes after the order. DroneDeck is a company that's actually doing that today. They are using the Helium network to do it. And again, these are companies that took several years to like bring their product to market, and they're now appearing, and we're super excited about some of the applications and use cases that are showing up. The other side of interesting things that we've seen is other networks that do similar things to Helium. So there are companies like Extelia, Senet, Actility, Netmore. These are all IoT companies using the same technology as Helium, but doing it with a private network instead of a big public network. So if they have a customer that's in a warehouse or in a factory or some application like that, they build a network in that place, right? So that the factory is covered, or the college is covered, or whatever it is. What we're now starting to see is we're partnering with all of these companies, or Helium is partnering with all these companies, I should say, because what they've realized is it's much, much more efficient for them to take advantage of the Helium network than keep trying to build their own version, right? And so we're excited to see some of these because they have serious corporate customers. So for example, Actility works with Volvo and Olympus and Cisco and like major names that they have been working on for like several years, and that's what they do for a living. And now they get to be able to take advantage of the Helium network and the enormous coverage that exists. So a few years ago, there was an improvement proposal called HIP-19. In the Helium network, proposals and changes to the protocol are governed through a process called the Helium Improvement Proposal. We borrowed it from Bitcoin. But it's the same kind of idea. The community proposes an idea, it gets voted on and discussed, and eventually implemented if passed. HIP-19 was the idea that more than one hotspot manufacturer should be able to exist in the Helium network. Up until that time, we were the only manufacturer of hotspots. Like we had built 20 or 30,000 hotspots, and the community said anyone should be able to build a hotspot, right? Like you should be able to have multiple manufacturers able to do this. HIP-19 eventually passed. There are now something like 65 or 70 different hotspot manufacturers. But the thing that's important about that is not that there are 65 or 70 different manufacturers necessarily, but it's that they were able to like multiply the effect of going to market on Helium. Rather than just us, like one relatively small company, there are now 65 companies going to market, selling Helium, convincing people to buy hotspots and explaining what it's all about. What we're now trying to do on the demand side of the network, so it's the sensors and the usage of the network, is recreate roughly the same thing. Like we realize that we are just a single entity and we are going after a space that is enormous. Analysts expect this space to have tens of billions of devices using IoT networks over the next coming years, and we are unable to do that alone. Like we are not going to successfully acquire tens of billions of sensors on our own. So what we are introducing today is something called OpenLNS, which is LNS in the IoT universe is something called a LoRaWAN network server. It's the least exciting sounding thing. But it is the back-end part of the network. It is where authentication and security and device provisioning and all of the controls of an IoT network live. All the companies I mentioned previously, like Actility and Senet and Netmore and all these guys, they have their own version of an LNS. Up until now, the only way to use the Helium network has been to use an LNS that we built. It was called Console. It's quite nice, it's very pretty. I think it has the best user interface of all of these LNSs, but it doesn't have all the features that everyone needs. And so that's been a challenge as we've tried to work with more and more of these LoRaWAN IoT companies. So with OpenLNS, the idea is that instead of having to connect all your hotspots and all your sensor data into our console, you can now connect to any LoRaWAN network server that exists. There are lots of providers that do this, by the way. Some that you will have heard of are like AWS has an LNS, and all of these companies at the top have their own LNS stacks, and there are lots and lots of other LNSs on the marketplace. So the way this works is there's now an entity or a piece of software called an LNS oracle. It sits there receiving data from hotspots, and then on the other side can connect into any LoRaWAN network server. So it doesn't have to be us, it doesn't have to be anything we built, it can literally be anyone's LNS. So if you wanted to stand up your own on AWS, you're now able to do that. And the reason that's interesting is the same thing that I was just describing about HIP-19. What happens now is that rather than just us, Nova Labs, you now have multiple different companies going to market trying to acquire sensors and customers to use the network. Like, we expect this to have like an enormously multiplicative effect, just like it did with hotspots. Hotspots grew from the 20,000 or so that we built to 1 million because there were 65 companies doing it. So we think the same thing is going to happen on the demand side of the network, on the sensor side of the network, as a result of implementing OpenLNS. So I'm super excited about this because it opens up the world of sensors to Helium, which is the largest network of public infrastructure. So in terms of what Nova is up to next, some of you have perhaps followed what we're doing, but we've got a few things that we've been working on that we think are super interesting as well. So I've got to wait patiently for the animations to play. Another improvement proposal that occurred a few months ago was something called HIP-51. HIP-51 was the idea that there should be more than just an IoT network on Helium. So today we've got a 1 million node IoT network, but the community was thinking like maybe we should do more than just IoT. What about cellular? What about Wi-Fi? And so HIP-51 proposed that Helium should become a network of networks. So you should have IoT, you should have cellular, you should have Wi-Fi, VPNs. What about like a distributed CDN? Anything where a distributed network of nodes would be useful, you could apply in HIP-51. And it proposed a structure for how that should occur and how those tokens should work. The first network that has come alive as a result of HIP-51 is 5G. So this launched a few months ago. This slide is already outdated. I think there's close to 6,800 5G hotspots on the network now. Works very similarly to the IoT network. Consumers or individuals or businesses buy a 5G hotspot, they stick it either in their home, on a balcony, or in a window, or they put it in a commercial space like a coffee shop or a mall or something. The difference is, of course, the end devices that use that network are cell phones and not low-powered sensors. We are now in a very good place, having understood how this all works and how these networks grow, to take advantage of the demand side of the network. So last month in New York, you may have seen that we announced the world's first crypto carrier, as we're calling it, Helium Mobile. And we created Helium Mobile because we wanted to, we envision a world where consumers or users of the network actually benefit from using it. If you, regardless of what you do, whether you're a coverage provider, whether you're a subscriber, you are adding value to the network, and we think you should be rewarded for that. So Helium Mobile is the world's first attempt at doing something like that. The features that we try to focus on, the first one is privacy and security. This is something that I think is super important. So that's everything from data encryption, it's making sure that SIM swapping is practically impossible. I don't know if anyone has fallen victim to that, but it's kind of a disaster. We want to make the network super affordable as a result of the way that the network is built. Traditionally, a network would cost tens of billions of dollars to build, but because this is a people-powered effort, it won't cost tens of billions of dollars to build, and we can pass the cost savings on to the subscribers and probably make this an unbeatable offering in terms of price. And of course, the coverage is built by people and not companies. But in order for Helium Mobile to work, the first problem we have to overcome is that there's only 7,000 hotspots on the network, right? If you're going to be a subscriber to a cell phone plan, it can only work where there are 7,000 cell towers. That wouldn't work. So what we did is we partnered with T-Mobile, which we announced last month, and the idea here, thank you. The idea there is that this is a hybrid model. It's the first time T-Mobile has ever done anything like this, where a subscriber to Helium Mobile will use a Helium hotspot when they are within range of it, but use the T-Mobile network when they're not in range of it, right? So as the Helium network grows, subscribers to Helium Mobile will use Helium more often than they will T-Mobile, and the cost for using the Helium network is much lower than using T-Mobile's network. So over time, we think this hybrid network idea is going to be the way that all networks ultimately get built, and we're excited for Helium Mobile to be the first example and the first demonstrator of how this model could work. So one thing that I've heard a lot from the Helium community, and the one thing that I've followed closely, is how does Helium Mobile benefit the Helium ecosystem? Like, isn't this just a way for Nova Labs to make money? And like, of course, we are trying to make money. Like that, we are a company that is trying to stay in business. So making money is important to us. But Helium Mobile benefits everyone in the Helium ecosystem, and I'll take a second to try and explain how. So there are now multiple tokens as a result of HIP51. So here you see the icons for mobile and IoT. Those are two tokens that exist in the Helium ecosystem. At any time, those two tokens can be redeemed for HNT. So you can say through the mobile app or through a wallet or through a command line or whatever, I want to exchange my holdings of mobile for the equivalent amount of HNT. And you can do that. The reason that that makes sense or that works is that every single network on Helium as part of HIP51 requires data credits to use. So this is a concept that we've had since the start. Data credits are kind of like a stable coin inside the Helium network. The reason they exist is to try and create a fixed price for using the network so the price isn't fluctuating wildly as the market changes. I don't know of many other networks that do it this way, but to me it's the only way that makes sense, otherwise the cost of using the network is too variable and too much of a challenge. The only way to acquire data credits is to destroy HNT. So as more and more data is used on the network, more and more HNT is destroyed. So as the circulating supply of HNT decreases, we expect that the value of the network increases. Hotspot hosts who are providing this service are then rewarded back in either mobile or IoT tokens. So just to sort of illustrate this example, because I know it's reasonably complicated, here's an example of a cell phone using the network, burning data credits, which reduces the HNT supply. And you can imagine if you were a 5G hotspot host with a hotspot in a coffee shop and someone's streaming Netflix, this would happen to you. You would earn HNT as a result, you would earn mobile tokens, as a result of providing service to those people. And the same thing goes for IoT. So anyone hosting an IoT hotspot would achieve the same goal from an IoT sensor. And so the point here that is really, really powerful is it doesn't really matter what devices use the network. What matters the most is that there is demand and applications on the network that consume data credits and ultimately cause HNT to be destroyed. So it doesn't matter if you're an IoT holder, it doesn't matter if you're an HNT holder, it doesn't matter if you're an IoT hotspot host. Ultimately, what you want to see on the network is utility and growth and usage, because it results in more HNT being destroyed. So that's the purpose of this sort of network of concept. It's not intended to move value away from IoT into 5G, or to move network value away from 5G into a VPN. It's not about that at all. It is literally the cliche, which I don't love, of rising tides lift all boats, but that's really what it's all about. It's like, how do we increase utility and usage of the network all across the board, because it will benefit everyone that's involved in the Helium ecosystem. So in the end state is, of course, that you end up with this network of networks where everyone is using Helium, participating in the same token ecosystem, and everyone is adding value. Another HIP. You can see the Helium community is super active in proposing changes to the network. HIP 70 this one actually came from us. This was a proposal to completely re-architect the way Helium works. And part of that proposal was that we should no longer be building our own L1. So when we started Helium, we started building Helium in 2017, the only L1 that could be used was Ethereum, and I'm sure to everyone in this audience, everyone realizes that trying to build applications on Ethereum, not really a viable thing. It wasn't in 2017, still isn't today. So when we looked at what could be done, what L1 would make the most sense, we chose Solana. So I think everyone knows in this room, I hope, Helium will be moving to Solana. And the timeline for that is that we hope over the next few months we'll be complete with this transition, and all of HNT, IoT, mobile, all of the tokens will live on the Solana chain and be part of the Solana ecosystem. I am personally super excited about this. I think this is the slide that isn't going to play properly. But just imagine there was a spinning Solana logo here and it looked really cool. We were supposed to fix this. But the part that I'm most excited about, and surely the part that resonates with everyone in this room, Solana, I think, has done a phenomenal job of growing a developer ecosystem. Of all the chains that exist, and there are many, the thing that I think Solana has done very, very well is grow a developer ecosystem. So we are super excited to be able to collaborate with that ecosystem for all manner of things. If you wanted to split your hotspot earnings with multiple wallets, you could probably do that pretty easily on Solana. If you wanted to, like, I don't know, maybe step-in users can be verifiers on the Helium network because they're out walking around anyway. You know, there's all sorts of things where I think composability and cross-application development will be valuable. So I'm super excited to see what that community comes up with. We've known the Solana team for a very long time, pre-crypto, and I think they've done a phenomenal job of growing both the network, but also the developer ecosystem in particular. So the last thing, because I've got 14 seconds, and Anna, the stage manager, will kill me if I go over. As I think everyone saw yesterday, I hope, we also announced that Saga customers will get unlimited data and voice on Helium Mobile for the first 30 days. So hopefully that's it. And now the clock is yelling at me and it's flashing red with 0000, so I'm finished. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you all on the Helium network.
Did anyone here do speech and debate in high school? Raise your hands.